The ceiling tiles were all the same, but I kept counting them anyway. Something about the repetition soothed me. Like if I could keep track of each square above me, I wouldn't think too hard about the aching below the bandages. My body felt foreign, stitched and bruised, heavy in ways I hadn't prepared for. They told me the surgery went well, but I didn't feel well. I felt like someone had hit pause on my life and then forgotten to press play again. My phone sat on the tray table, screen dark. No new messages. I'd texted him earlier that morning. Something simple. "Good morning, still here," with a little smiley face. It was stupid, but I needed him to know I was still holding on, still trying. No reply. At first I told myself he was just busy, meetings, work stress. You know how he gets. But deep down, a voice I didn't want to listen to had started whispering, days ago. The same voice that used to whisper back when he stayed out too late, or looked a little too long at someone else. I hated that voice. I hated that it was mine. A nurse popped in to check my vitals. She had kind eyes and tired hands. "Anyone coming by today?" she asked, like it was casual, like it wasn't a knife to the gut. "Maybe later," I said. "He's got a lot on his plate." She smiled, and I could tell she didn't believe me. Or maybe she'd just heard it too many times. The woman in the bed next to mine had visitors. Her mum, her sister, her boyfriend, who kept trying to make her laugh even though she was clearly in pain. I watched them with envy, and then immediately felt guilty for it. I wasn't supposed to be focused on him. I was supposed to be grateful I made it through. I was supposed to be strong. But all I could think about was how quiet my phone was, how my side of the room always stayed still. I turned to face the window, even though it hurt. The sky was gray. Classic. I tried to remember the last time he'd made me feel safe. Not just liked or wanted, safe. It had been a while, hadn't it? Still, I clung to the image of him walking through that door, flowers in hand, guilt in his eyes saying something stupid like, traffic was insane. I wanted to believe in that version of him, the one who showed up. But hours passed. Dinner came and went. My stitches throbbed, the lights dimmed, and I was still alone. I turned, off my phone, because hope hurts more than silence. The message came 3 days later. Not a call, not even a voice note. Just a simple, typed out, "I'm so sorry, things got complicated." That was it. No explanation, no specifics, just a vague apology buried in a sea of unread group chats and delivery updates. I stared at it for a full minute, like maybe if I waited long enough, it would unfold into something more meaningful. Maybe he'd follow up with, "I've been a mess without you," or "Tell me what you need." But nothing came. Just that one flimsy sentence. I didn't reply. I didn't even open it so he wouldn't get the read receipt. Let him wonder if I'd seen it. Let him sit in the silence I'd been drowning in for days. The truth landed quietly, without ceremony. He hadn't shown up because he didn't want to. I know that sounds dramatic, but it's amazing how simple the worst things really are when you peel away the excuses. He didn't call, he didn't visit, he didn't ask how I was sleeping or what the doctors had said or if I needed anything, because he was busy being somewhere else, with someone else. I found out the same way anyone finds out anything now. Online, social media, that perfect little trail of breadcrumbs people leave without meaning to. A photo, a tagged location, a hand that didn't belong to me. It wasn't the cheating itself that broke me, it was the timing. The timing told me everything. While I was drugged up and stitched back together, he was out laughing at rooftop bars, hands on someone else's hips. While I was wondering if I'd ever feel whole again, he was making memories with a stranger. He didn't just cheat on me, he left me to rot in a hospital bed alone. And I was supposed to forgive that? That night, I sat upright for the first time without crying. I took out a notepad the nurse had given me, meant for jotting questions for the doctor, and wrote 2 words in thick black pen. "You'll pay." Not in the soap opera way, not with revenge sex or keying his car. No, that's not my style. I wanted something quieter, smarter. I wanted him to feel the weight of what he did in a way he wouldn't forget. And lucky for me, I had receipts. Literally. The hospital bill had arrived that morning, my name on the top. Several pages long. A breathtaking amount. I thought about how much I gave him. My time, my trust, my body. And then I thought, he broke me. He should pay for it. I smiled for the first time since the surgery. It didn't reach my eyes, but it was a start. There's a kind of quiet that doesn't soothe you. It sharpens things, makes the shadows darker, the hours longer. That was the quiet I lived in for the next week. I was discharged from the hospital on a Wednesday. It was cloudy, but not dramatically so. Just dull. Everything looked like it had been filtered through a gray film. The nurse smiled and asked if someone was picking me up. "No," I said, tying my hoodie tighter. "I'm good." She didn't push. My legs wobbled as I stood, but I forced myself to walk out on my own. I wanted to feel the ground again. Really, feel it, beneath my feet, with nothing and no one to steady me. I ordered a rideshare and gave them my address. Not the one I shared with him, the one I'd moved into before him, years ago. Still in my name. Still safe. I hadn't gone back there in so long it almost felt like a betrayal to myself, but I needed a space that didn't reek of him. Take him aboard, Yini Shapisa. Key still worked. The air inside smelled stale, like time had folded in on itself. I dropped my bag by the door and sat on the floor, letting everything be still for once. I'd never cried the way people do in the movies. Knees to chest, sobs into a pillow, mascara streaked in dramatic lines. But that night, I came close. Not loud, just quiet, shaking tears, the kind that come from realizing something is truly over. It wasn't just the relationship that had died. It was the future I'd planned like an idiot. The dumb little mental snapshots I'd stored, us picking out baby names, arguing over tile patterns, cooking in our socks. Gone. In their place, invoices, pill bottles, and that god-awful feeling of being blindsided by someone you thought was on your team. Still, I didn't call him. I didn't scream. I didn't block him either. That would have given him too much importance. I started collecting things instead. The discharge papers, the itemized hospital bill, the card from my mom that said, "Glad you're okay. He's probably just overwhelmed." I wanted to laugh at that one, as if overwhelmed people just happened to land in someone else's bed. I also started writing, little pieces here and there. Not a journal, nothing poetic, just memories, cold and raw, dates, times, things he said that now sounded hollow. I wanted to have it all laid out when I finally saw him, not to convince him of anything, but to remind myself of why I wasn't crazy, why I wasn't dramatic or overreacting or taking it too personally. He made a choice, a clear one. So now I was going to make mine. He texted 3 days later as if nothing had happened. "Hey, how are you feeling? I've been thinking about you. Miss you." No punctuation at the end, just a soft, harmless lie, gift wrapped like a peace offering. I stared at it for a minute, then locked my phone and walked away. The audacity made my jaw ache. I paced the kitchen for 10 full minutes before finally replying, "We should talk. Come by Sunday." He replied with a thumbs up emoji. Sunday arrived like a punch. I'd spent the whole morning putting things in place. Not to impress, not to provoke. Just to control the scene. The hospital bill was folded neatly on the coffee table. I'd underlined the total. The note was already written, sitting quietly beneath a coaster. And me? I wore a black sweatshirt and leggings. No mascara, no perfume, just me. Tired, stitched together, and completely done. He buzzed at the door, around 2. I let him in without a word. He walked in like nothing was wrong, which felt surreal. He smiled, and reached to hug me. I stepped back. "You look good," he said. I didn't answer, just pointed to the couch. He sat, looked around. "You've been staying here?" I nodded. There was a pause, one of those ugly, squirmy silences. Then he said, "Look, I know things have been hard, I didn't want to make anything worse. That's when I handed him the envelope. He blinked. "What's this?" "Hospital bill," I said. "Itemized. Every scan, every stitch, every hour I laid there while you—" I stopped. I wasn't going to cry in front of him. He looked inside, like maybe it would explain itself differently the second time. Then he caught the note and picked it up. It was small, white, just 4 words, written in the center. "You broke me. Pay for it." He didn't speak right away, just folded the paper again and set it down, hands resting on his knees like he was bracing for something bigger. "Is this... what? Revenge?" "No," I said. "This is accountability." His face changed, not into guilt, into panic. He started talking fast, trying to rewrite the story. "It wasn't what you think. I didn't mean to. I was scared. I thought I'd lose you. I didn't know how to cope." I raised my hand. "Don't." He stopped. "You don't get to narrate this. Not anymore." He sat there for another minute, waiting, maybe hoping I'd soften. I didn't. Eventually, he stood. "I'll transfer the money." "That's not why I asked you here," I said. "That's just the minimum." He looked at me lost. "Then why?" I stared him dead in the eyes. "So you'd know what it feels like to sit across from someone and realize you don't matter to them anymore." After he left, I didn't move for a while. I just sat there on the same couch, staring at the space he'd occupied, like it could still echo something honest back at me. But all it did was sit there, silent and unbothered. Exactly how I imagined him when he was cheating. That was the thing. I kept trying to understand it like a puzzle I could solve. If I put enough pieces together, timestamps, receipts, glances at his phone, maybe I could explain it away. Maybe I could make it make sense. But the truth is, it doesn't make sense, and it's not supposed to. He broke a promise while I was literally opened up and stitched back together by strangers in sterile gowns. That's not a misunderstanding. That's character. I went to the fridge, grabbed the orange juice, and drank it straight from the bottle. Then I opened the freezer and took out the cookie dough I'd been saving for a sad day. I spooned it out cold, leaning against the kitchen counter like I had a cigarette habit I never picked up. I wasn't crying. Not then. I was just exhausted, like the kind of tired that seeps into your joints and makes you forget what your face looks like when it's smiling. Later that night, I crawled into bed, alone. My phone lit up twice, his name both times. I didn't open the messages. I turned the screen over and let it face the mattress like a guilty secret. What surprised me most wasn't how angry I was. It was how relieved I felt. I didn't have to pretend anymore. I didn't have to fake laugh at his dumb stories or excuse the way he always forgot the little things. I didn't have to convince myself that maybe this was love, just the messy version. It wasn't. Love doesn't require this much defending. I thought about the day I told him I was going under, how he held my hand in the waiting room and kissed, my forehead like some knight in a rom-com. I thought about how just hours later, he was somewhere else, doing something else, with someone else. I finally cried. Not because I missed him, but because I hated that I didn't. Because it scared me that a part of me had always known he wasn't built for staying. And that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't either. The next morning, I woke up with that hollow feeling that comes after a storm. Like the damage had been done, but now I had to deal with the debris. The worst part was how normal everything looked. My plants were still upright. The curtains still swayed in the breeze. His toothbrush was still in the holder. I didn't touch it. I wanted to burn it, but I didn't. That would have given it too much meaning. Instead, I left it there, like an artifact of a lie. I wanted him to come back and see it, realize how out of place it was, how foreign it had become. I made coffee slowly, letting each part of the process anchor me. Scoop, pour, press, wait. The ritual felt like control, like something he hadn't touched. His messages were still sitting there, unopened, and now he was calling. I watched the phone ring, watched his name flash across the screen like a threat. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened the drawer where I'd kept all our couple things: receipts from holidays, the silly Valentine's Day card where he misspelled my name twice. I laid it all out on the dining table like evidence. It wasn't just that he cheated, it was that he did it when I couldn't fight back. When I was under anesthesia, my body literally cut open, trying to heal, and he was somewhere else, proving just how little I meant when no one was watching. So, I made a decision. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg for closure or ask questions he didn't deserve to answer. I was going to let the silence say everything. I opened my laptop, pulled up the hospital invoice I'd been avoiding, scanned the total, an amount that made me laugh out loud for its sheer absurdity. Then I clicked print. While the printer spat out pages, I grabbed a pen and a yellow sticky note. I wrote, "You broke me. Now pay for it." No dramatic metaphors, no monologues, just the truth in 10 words. I folded the bill, placed the note on top, and tucked both into an envelope. His name on the front, nothing else. No dear, no love, no from. Just the beginning of the end. He wanted to play stupid games? Fine, but I was done handing out free chances. Done being the girl who let things slide in the name of keeping the peace. There was no peace left to keep. Just me, my scar, and a bank statement that didn't lie. I waited until Sunday. Sundays always made him soft, guilty, nostalgic, maybe even human. Something about the end of the week made him more receptive, probably because it was the day his lies caught up with him, the day he had to sit with himself in silence. So I texted him, just one line. "Can you stop by around 4? I have something. For you." No emojis, no explanation. I knew he'd show up. Curiosity was stronger than guilt, especially for men like him. At 3:50, I cleaned the coffee table and straightened the cushions, even though I didn't care how it looked. It wasn't about neatness, it was about control. I wanted to own the space, not let it be one more room, where his presence rearranged everything. At exactly 4:07, there was a knock. I didn't rush to the door. Let him wait. Let him stand there, wondering what kind of version of me he'd find on the other side. When I opened it, he looked the same, but smaller somehow, or maybe I'd just grown in the past few days. His eyes scanned my face like he was searching for a welcome sign. There wasn't one. "Hey," he said, with a voice like nothing had happened. I nodded, stepping aside. He walked in like he still lived there, like the air hadn't changed. But it had. Everything had. The sofa, the light, the silence. It all belonged to me now. I didn't know if I should call or... "You didn't," I cut in, "but you're here now." He looked uncomfortable, as if the couch might bite him. I didn't offer him a seat. Instead, I handed him the envelope. His name faced upward in that clean, cold handwriting I'd practiced for years. On birthday cards, Christmas gifts, love notes he never kept. He raised an eyebrow. "What's this?" "Open it." He did. The moment stretched as he scanned. The hospital bill. Then, his eyes froze on the sticky note. I watched his mouth tighten, his posture shift, his mask crack. His voice came out low, but the panic was there. "Are you serious?" I tilted my head. "As the surgery you ignored." He blinked fast, still holding the envelope like it was radioactive. "You can't just..." "I can." And I did. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't crying. I was calm in the way a cut feels. Right before it starts to bleed. Numb, certain, clean. I went through hell while you were out screwing someone in a bar bathroom. I paid with my body. You can start with your wallet. He opened his mouth, closed it. No words came out. I let the silence swallow him. Because this time, I wasn't the broken one. He stared at the envelope like it had betrayed him. He didn't even acknowledge the note anymore. It was as if it didn't exist, as if it wasn't his reality that he was holding. His fingers twitched. I saw it, just the smallest, most desperate tremor in his hand. He was trying to compose himself, but the facade was slipping. I didn't blink. "Are you seriously going to ignore it?" I asked, my voice cutting through the air like a knife. There was no softness now, no sympathy. I didn't mean for this to happen. You know that." His voice cracked just slightly, but I didn't let him off the hook. I wasn't interested in hearing his excuses anymore. It was too late for that. "Oh, I'm sure you didn't," I said, stepping a little closer to him. I couldn't help it. I needed to close that space between us. He had always been so close, so comfortable, and now he was an alien in his own home. "You didn't mean for it to happen, but it did." His eyes flicked up to mine, a silent apology flashing there for half a second before he masked it again. "Look, I was wrong, okay? I messed up. I can fix this." "No," I said, my voice steady, final. "You can't fix this." He flinched. "I don't need fixing," I added, leaning against the doorframe, my arms folded. "I'm already whole. I was whole before you, and I'll be whole long after you're gone. But I needed something from you, and you threw it away like it was nothing." I could see it in his eyes, the realization that he had lost. He didn't know what to say, what to do. The man who used to command a room was now the one who was lost, searching for an exit that didn't exist. He stopped, rubbing, his face in frustration. "I don't know what to say. I'm sorry." I shook my head. I wasn't interested in his apologies anymore. "That's the thing," I said, stepping back. "You've been saying sorry for so long that the words lost all meaning. I'm done with your apologies." The words hit him harder than I expected. I saw him take a step back, as if my rejection had physically pushed him. His lips parted, but nothing came out. "Do you want to know the truth?" I continued. "The real truth?" He nodded slowly, like he was bracing himself. "The truth is, I don't need you. I never did. And now, I definitely don't want you." The words hung in the air like a weight, sinking into the space between us. I watched his face collapse, watched the fight drain out of him. "I'm sorry," he whispered again, his voice quieter this time, defeated. But I was already past that. Sorry's not enough. You're not enough. For the first time in a long while, I felt free. He stood there for what felt like an eternity, the silence between us growing thick, suffocating. The envelope, the one with all the weight of my resentment, was still in his hand. It was almost comical how badly he wanted to tear it open, to see what was inside, to find a way to undo it all. But there was nothing left to fix. The damage had already been done. He shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting from the envelope to me, trying to gauge whether there was a way out of this mess. I never wanted to hurt you," he mumbled, his voice low, almost pleading. "You know that, right?" I stared at him, incredulous. It wasn't anger I felt anymore, not even the satisfaction of revenge, just a deep, heavy exhaustion. "You don't get to say that anymore," I said, my voice steady, but there was a bitter edge to it that wasn't there before. "Not after everything. Not after the lies. Not after you left me alone to recover while you were out there, with her. Don't pretend like I don't know what that feels like." His face flushed, but he still couldn't form the words that would have fixed it. He stood there, helpless, his hands trembling slightly like he was waiting for a sign that I would let him back in. But that door had long since been shut. "I don't think you understand," I continued, taking a step forward, my heels clicking sharply against the floor. "I don't need you to apologize anymore. I don't need to hear the same empty words over and over again. I'll do anything," he said desperately, his eyes wide, pleading. "Anything, just please, let me make it up to you." I almost laughed. The audacity, the sheer nerve of him. After everything, he still thought he had any say in how this ended. "You can't make it up to me," I said softly, "because it's not about fixing something that was broken. It's about accepting the fact that you chose to walk away from us. You chose to betray me when I needed you the most. You chose her." His face hardened then, a flicker of anger creeping in. But he didn't challenge me. Maybe he knew deep down that there was no point. This wasn't some small mistake. This wasn't something that could be swept under the rug or easily forgotten. This was the end. "You should leave," I said, The words not even registering until they were out. They felt final. Absolute. He looked at me, a mixture of disbelief and heartbreak in his eyes. "Is this really it?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. "Are we really over?" I didn't flinch. "We've been over for a while now. You just didn't want to face it. But now?" I took a breath, feeling the weight of the finality in the air. "Now, you're just a stranger in my life, and I'm done." There was no dramatic exit, no harsh words from me, no accusations, just the soft, quiet finality of a door slamming shut. And for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. I heard him leave. The front door clicked shut, but it didn't sound like the end of anything. It sounded like the beginning of something else, like the air in the room had changed, had shifted just enough to remind me that I wasn't trapped in a life I no longer recognized. I stood there for a moment, listening to the silence that followed. The house felt quieter without him, almost eerily so, as though the space itself was exhaling a sigh of relief. But there was no comfort in the emptiness, no sense of peace, only the weight of what I'd just done. Part of me wondered if I'd made a mistake, if walking away without looking back was too harsh. But then I remembered everything he had done, every time he had promised he wouldn't hurt me, only to break that promise again and again. There was no room for doubt, no room for regret. He had made his choices, and now, so had I. I turned, away from the door, and looked around the room, suddenly keenly aware of how much of our life together was still here. The coffee table where we'd sat, the kitchen that always seemed to hum with the sound of his voice as he made dinner, the photographs of us on the wall, the perfect, smiling couple that no one had ever suspected was falling apart. The life I'd clung to was now nothing more than a series of broken pieces scattered across this place, and I didn't want to pick them up anymore. The weight of everything settled back onto my shoulders, my chest tightened, but there was something liberating about it too. It was a sharp, unfamiliar ache, but it was my ache. It was mine to carry. I had been living for so long in a state of denial, trying to convince myself that I could make it work, that I could fix him, that we could fix us. But I had finally accepted the truth, and that truth wasn't something I could change. I walked to the living room window and stared out at the world beyond. The street was quiet, the sun dipping low on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. For a moment, I let myself get lost in the beauty of it, as if the world outside had nothing to do with the chaos inside. But I knew that couldn't last. I couldn't pretend anymore. I needed to face what I had just done. I turned away from the window, my fingers brushing against the cool glass. There were still moments when the memories would try to creep back. In the moments when I'd allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was still hope. But I had to shut that part of my heart off for good. I wasn't going to let him drag me back into that place again. I grabbed my phone from the kitchen counter and tapped out a quick message to my best friend, the one person who had always been there for me, even when I had refused to see the truth. I didn't need words of sympathy. I just needed to hear that I had done the right thing, that I was allowed to choose myself. A single text popped up on the screen, and I smiled as I read it. "You've got this. One day, you'll look back and see just how much strength you have." And in that moment, I realized she was right. I had finally found the courage to stop pretending, to stop waiting for someone who would never be there. I was ready to move on, ready to finally start living for me. The house felt even emptier after he left. There was nothing left to remind me of the life I'd thought we were building together, except for the remnants of his presence, his toothpaste still sitting on the bathroom counter, his jacket draped over the chair in the hall. The little things that once felt like home now felt like relics of a person I no longer knew. I had to get rid of them. I pulled the jacket from the chair, the fabric too soft in my hands, and tossed it onto the bed. It was time to take everything that still held his trace, his scent, his touch, the quiet echoes of his laugh, and get rid of it. I didn't want to keep any of it. Not one thing that had once made me believe he cared. The empty spaces around me were beginning to feel too loud. The silence didn't comfort me. It weighed on me, like it was pressing against my chest, reminding me of how much I had lost, how much I had given away without ever realizing it. I could still see him in the doorway, his apologetic look when he walked in, as if everything had been an accident, as if he hadn't made the choice to hurt me. I'd stared at him long enough to see the guilt, the fear, but also the arrogance. The arrogance that came from knowing he could walk away and I'd still be the one to pick up the pieces. But not this time. This time, he wouldn't get the satisfaction of seeing me weak. I stepped into the living room, my feet cold on the hardwood floor, and picked up the bottle of wine I had left open from the night before. The glass felt heavy in my hand as I poured myself a drink. I wasn't drinking to forget. I was drinking because, for the first time in a long time, I was allowing myself to feel something. The anger, the sadness, the relief, it was all pouring through me at once, and I didn't want to stop it. I needed to let myself feel everything. The sound of the wine pouring seemed too loud, too deliberate in the quiet of the house. I watched. As the liquid swirled in the glass, the deep red reflecting the dim light in the room, the weight of it grounded me, reminded me that I wasn't floating through this. This was real. The heartbreak, the betrayal. It was all too real. As I sat down on the couch, the weight of the world seemed to settle into the cushions beside me. I had been here before, in the silence, in the aftermath of it all. But this time, something felt different. Something felt like I could breathe again, like there was a chance to rebuild, to create a life that wasn't dictated by him. The phone buzzed in my hand, but I ignored it. I wasn't ready for any more questions, any more apologies. I had nothing to say to him. Not yet, anyway. Instead, I took another sip of wine, the warmth spreading through me. Maybe this wasn't a fresh start yet, but it could be. Maybe I wasn't ready to forgive him, but I was ready to move on. And that, I realized, was enough. The next few days were a blur of mundane motions. I moved through the motions of my life, but nothing felt the same. The house was quieter, emptier, yet louder somehow. The silence I had fought so hard to fill with. Him was now a vast space that pressed in on me from all sides. It felt suffocating, but I was getting used to it. Maybe I was learning how to breathe in the emptiness. Every time I passed his empty side of the bed, I stopped for a moment, imagining what it would be like to reach out, to call him back, to pull him into my arms and pretend everything was fine. But the thought always faded, replaced by a clarity I hadn't anticipated. This wasn't something I could fix. This wasn't something he could fix. This was something I had to face on my own. I started making small changes around the house, a new throw blanket, a different painting on the wall, even some fresh flowers on the kitchen counter. It was nothing big, just enough to shift the energy, to make this place feel like mine again. I knew I needed to focus on something else, anything else. I began to throw myself into work, into the things that used to make me feel whole before he'd made me forget. I spent late nights at the office, trying to avoid going back to that empty, silent house. It felt safer, at least for now. But even there, I couldn't escape him. The text messages began. At first, they were polite, apologetic. He missed me, he was sorry, he was thinking of me. I ignored them. I wasn't ready to listen. Not yet. A week passed, and I could feel the tension growing inside me, the push and pull between what I knew I needed to do and the lingering pull of old habits. But there was something else now, a quiet strength I hadn't felt before. I wasn't sure what it was exactly, but I knew I couldn't keep ignoring the elephant in the room. And then, on the 8th day, my phone rang. It was him. I stared at the screen for a long time before answering. "Hey," he said, his voice hesitant but trying to sound calm. "I've been thinking about us, about what happened. I want to make things right." I leaned back in my chair, the words sinking in slowly. I could hear the desperation in his voice, but it was different this time. There was a sincerity there that I hadn't heard before, but the truth was, I wasn't sure if I could forgive him. "I don't know if you can," I said softly, my voice steady but tired. You broke me, and I'm not sure I'm ready to let you fix it." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could almost hear him processing my words, the weight of them settling into the space between us. "I'm sorry," he said finally, almost too quietly to hear. "I know," I replied, not sure if I was speaking to him or to myself. "But sorry doesn't change anything. It doesn't fix it." And then I hung up. For the first time since he left, I felt like I had made a choice. I wasn't waiting for him anymore. I wasn't waiting for anyone. I was choosing myself. A few days later, I received an unexpected delivery. It was a small, nondescript box wrapped in brown paper, nothing that immediately gave away its contents. When I opened it, I found a single plain envelope inside with my name scrawled across it in his handwriting. The box felt heavier than it should have, as if the weight of the entire situation had been packed into it, sealed tight and left for me to uncover. I sat there for a moment, just staring at it. The quiet tick of the clock seemed to echo through the room as I turned the envelope over in my hands. There was no letter, no card, just the bare simplicity of his attempt to reach me. The instinct to tear it open was strong, but there was something that told me I needed to wait. I set the envelope down on the kitchen counter, away from the noise of the rest of the day. But it sat there, calling me, the unanswered question hanging in the air. Finally, I reached for it, breaking the seal slowly, carefully. Inside, I found not a heartfelt apology, but a check. A blank check with his name signed at the bottom. There was a note written on a scrap of paper placed carefully beneath it. I can't undo what I did, but I can at least try to fix what's broken. Consider this a small piece of me, trying to make it right. I owe you this much. I read it through once, then again, letting the words sink in. His offer was both strange and familiar. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. He wasn't pleading with me to take him back. He was trying to pay his way back into my life, into my trust. But I didn't want money. I didn't want a symbol of his guilt. What I wanted was something he couldn't give me. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't about what he thought would fix everything. It was about him thinking he could buy back everything he broke. But I wasn't angry anymore. It wasn't rage that coursed through my veins. It was something else, something quieter, more resolute. I folded the check neatly and slid it back into the envelope. I stood there for a while, holding the envelope in my hands, feeling the weight of the decision in my chest. Then I walked to the trash can and dropped it in. I wasn't going to let him buy his way out of this. If he wanted redemption, it wasn't going to be found in a check. It wasn't going to be found in anything that could be signed or delivered. It was going to take something else entirely. He had to see me, really see me, before he could even think of making things right. That was the truth I was holding on to. I would find my own way forward. I didn't need his money. I didn't need anything from him, except for him to understand that. I didn't call him. I didn't text him. I waited. I needed to be sure, to know that I was doing the right thing. But that didn't mean I was entirely immune to the swirling chaos inside me. The hurt, the anger, the confusion. They hadn't gone away. They were just tucked deeper, buried beneath layers of patience. He'd been trying to reach me. His messages, his calls, each one growing more desperate. He couldn't understand why I wasn't responding. He didn't. Seemed to grasp that the silence was the answer, that there was nothing left to say. Then, one evening, he showed up at my door. I hadn't been expecting it, but there he was, standing in the hallway with that same look he'd always had when he needed something. Half apologetic, half entitled, like he was expecting me to fall back into the old patterns. I opened the door. I didn't greet him. I didn't offer him an invitation in. Instead, I stood there in the doorway, my arms crossed, my posture firm. The silence stretched between us, long enough to make him shift uncomfortably. "You got my gift," he said, his voice tentative, but there was no real apology in it, just an assumption that I would take it. "I did," I said, my voice flat, emotionless. I wanted him to know that I wasn't impressed by the gesture, that I wasn't buying what he was trying to sell. He stepped forward, as if the physical space between us was the only thing stopping him from finding a solution. Look, I know I messed up. You don't get to say that anymore, I interrupted, cutting him off sharply. I don't want to hear that from you. Not now. He stopped, blinking as if my words had hit him harder than he expected. For a moment he looked vulnerable, almost lost, but then his shoulders squared and he leaned in closer to me. I don't expect forgiveness, he said, his voice softer now, more raw. But I want a chance to make it right. I owe you more than just money. You know that. No, I said again, more resolutely this time. You don't owe me anything. Not money, not words. You broke something I can't get back. His face softened, and for a fleeting moment, I saw the person I thought I loved. But it wasn't enough. It wasn't even close. I shook my head, my chest tightening as I stood my ground. You can't fix this with gestures, with gifts, or with promises. You don't get to fix anything. Then what do you want? He asked, a hint of frustration in his voice. What is it you want from me? I want you to understand that this is over, I said, my voice steady. I'm done. It's not about what you can do or what you think I need. It's about what you've already taken from me. And that's something I'll never get back. I turned away from him, the weight of my own words hanging in the air, and I left the door slightly ajar as I walked back inside. I didn't need to hear any more. I didn't need him to say anything else. I had said everything I needed to say. The silence this time wasn't cold. It wasn't empty. It was final. The days that followed were suffocating. Every time I closed my eyes, I could feel his presence lingering, like a shadow that wouldn't let go. But I refused to give in, to let his regret or his guilt worm their way back into my life. He had his chance, and he'd blown it. But it wasn't easy. The weight of everything still pressed on me. The feeling of being betrayed, the images of him with someone else while I lay in a hospital bed, vulnerable and needing him. All of it swirled together in my mind, like a constant storm. I kept the house quiet. I didn't reach out to anyone. I had no desire for comfort, for sympathy. People would talk. They would try to offer advice or a shoulder to lean on. But I wasn't interested in any of it. I'd already made my decision. The hardest part, though, was knowing that some part of me would always be tied to him, whether I liked it or not. One evening, I sat down with the hospital bill in front of me, still unopened. It felt like the last piece of this tangled mess, the final reminder of what had happened. I'd thought about throwing it away, letting it go. But then I remembered what he'd done, and I couldn't bring myself to. It wasn't just about the money. It wasn't just about the betrayal. It was about the principle of it all. The idea that he thought he could get away with it, that he could break me and not have to answer for it. I decided I would send it to him. Not just the bill, but everything. The weight of what he owed me wasn't something that could be measured in dollars, but that didn't mean I couldn't make him see the cost. He had taken something I couldn't replace, and now it was time for him to pay up. I wrote the note carefully, each word deliberate. You broke me, now pay for it. It was simple, but it was everything I needed to say. I wasn't asking for his apology, his understanding, or even his remorse. I just wanted him to feel the weight of what he'd done. The next day, I packaged it up, hospital bill, note, everything, and mailed it. I didn't feel a sense of closure, but I did feel a strange sort of peace. It wasn't that I had won or that I had gotten my revenge. It was that I had taken control. I wasn't going to let him dictate the terms of my healing. I wasn't going to wait for him to fix what he had broken. That night, I sat on the couch, the empty space beside me somehow comforting. I didn't know where the future was taking me. I didn't know if I would ever feel truly whole again. But I knew one thing. I would never let him take more from me. Never again. Days passed, but the air in my apartment felt thick with the kind of silence that grows after a storm, the kind where you don't know whether the worst is over or if you're just waiting for the next wave to crash. I hadn't heard from him since I sent the bill. No texts, no calls. It was as if he'd disappeared, as though I had never mattered enough for him to fight for. And in some strange way, I almost preferred it that way. The truth was, I hadn't known what I wanted from him when I'd sent that package. Maybe I expected him to beg. Maybe I thought he would somehow realize the gravity of his actions and offer me something. An explanation, an apology, or even some trace of the man I once thought I loved. But now, after all the hurt, I realized that even if he did come back, I wouldn't know how to trust him again. I spent the evening sitting by the window, watching the sky change as night fell. The stillness of the apartment was both eerie and comforting. The silence was like a vacuum, pulling everything into its depths, leaving only me with my thoughts. And it was there, in that quiet, that the questions started. Not the ones about him, though those still lingered at the back of my mind. No, these were different. They were about me. Who had I become in all of this? Was I stronger for standing up for myself? Or was I just fooling myself into thinking that sending him the bill would heal me? What was I really looking for? Validation? Closure? Or had I simply needed to make sure he would never forget what he'd done? I didn't have answers. Not really. I could tell myself that I'd done the right thing, that I was taking control of my life again. But deep down, I knew that something had shifted in me. Something that could never go back to the way it was before. The trust I'd once had in people in him had been shattered, and I wasn't sure how to piece it together again. I heard the sound of a knock at the door, and for a moment, my heart skipped a beat. For a split second, I thought it was him, standing there, maybe ready to apologize, to explain himself. But I didn't feel ready for that. Not yet. Not now. I opened the door to find a delivery driver holding a package. The address was mine, but the sender was unfamiliar. I accepted the package, curious, but almost afraid to open it. What could it possibly be? I tore open the envelope, revealing the contents. It was a letter, not from him, but from the hospital. They were sending a new bill, a bill for an extra procedure I hadn't known about. The amount was nearly double what I'd already paid. I set the paper down slowly, my pulse quickening. Was this some kind of cruel joke? After everything, after all the pain, this was what I got? An unexpected financial burden. And in a way, it felt like everything had come full circle. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was physical. It was financial. He had taken everything. He had stolen not just my trust, but now my security. For the first time in days, I felt a surge of anger. Not just at him, but at everything. The system, the life I had built, the choices that led me to this point. But one thing was clear. I couldn't let it break me again. I folded the bill and set it on the counter. Tomorrow would be another day to deal with it. But tonight, I would take my power back. I wouldn't let this be the thing that defined me. The next morning, the sunlight was different. It wasn't brighter or warmer, but it felt like it had a different purpose, as though it had come to shine on the decision I had made. I didn't wait for the world to make sense again. I couldn't. If I did, I'd be waiting forever. Instead, I started moving. No grand gestures, no dramatic speech. I just moved, because sometimes that's all you can do. I dressed slowly, each motion deliberate. The clothes I put on felt like armor. Nothing fancy, just something that shielded me from the thoughts threatening to pull me back into that dark place of wondering if I had made the right choice. If I was crazy for sending that bill, crazy for not confronting him face to face, crazy for thinking that I could get through all of this on my own. But the truth was, there wasn't a right choice. There wasn't a perfect way to handle it. And maybe that was the thing. Maybe that was the lesson. There were no rules for what came after betrayal, no script to follow. You just had to choose your own path and stick to it. I made a cup of coffee, staring at the letter from the hospital again. It sat there, reminding me of everything that had gone wrong, but it also reminded me of how far I had come. The surgery, the recovery, the mess of it all, it hadn't broken me, even if it felt like it sometimes. I wasn't broken, I was just changing, and change was painful, but necessary. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through the messages from friends, the ones who had checked in after I'd been in the hospital. I hadn't responded to most of them, lost in my own mind, too caught up in the hurt. But today, I replied, not to explain myself, but to tell them that I was okay, that I was still here. My thumb hovered over his contact. I hadn't blocked him, hadn't removed his number. I didn't need to. He had already made his choice, and I didn't. Need any more reminders of the man he'd turned into? He didn't deserve my attention anymore. But still, something nagged at me. Was I doing the right thing? Was this truly the end? I grabbed the bill from the counter and glanced at it one last time. My hands trembled slightly, but not from fear. It was anger, the same anger that had fueled me the night I sent him the letter. But it was different now. This was controlled, focused. I wasn't angry with him anymore. I was angry at the situation, at the circumstances that led to this moment. And that was a powerful realization. I slipped the bill into a drawer, where it belonged out of sight but not forgotten. I didn't need to obsess over it. What mattered now was moving forward, not just for me, but for the future I was building, one step at a time. The doorbell rang again, and this time I didn't hesitate. I knew what I had to do. No more waiting, no more second guessing. I opened the door, expecting another delivery, another reminder of what I was leaving behind. But instead, I found someone I hadn't expected. I opened the door without thinking, half expecting yet another delivery, or perhaps a stray package that was meant for someone else. But instead, there he was. He looked different somehow, smaller, as though the world had shrunk him down to size. His shoulders were hunched, and his face was a portrait of guilt, the weight of everything we had been carrying now collapsing in on him. It should have been satisfying to see him like this, but all I felt was tired. Tired of the lies, tired of the manipulation, tired of holding everything together when he had no intention of doing the same. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there, awkwardly shifting from foot to foot, as if waiting for me to break the silence. I was the one who'd done the leaving, the one who had handed him the hospital bill and the note, but somehow it was as if he thought I owed him the words. I leaned against the doorframe, folding my arms across my chest. I didn't need to invite him in. He didn't belong here. After a moment, he cleared his throat. I've been thinking about everything, and I want to talk. Can we just... No, I cut him off, my voice steady. There's nothing left to say. He winced as if I had slapped him, and for a second, I almost felt guilty. But I wasn't the one who had done the damage. I wasn't the one who had destroyed trust, shattered what we'd built, while I was lying in a hospital bed, completely unaware of the betrayal happening right under my nose. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. You have to understand, he began, but I didn't need to hear the excuses anymore. I wasn't interested in explanations that came too late. You're right, I said, finally pushing myself off the doorframe, my voice growing more firm with each word. You didn't mean for it to happen like this, but you did it. And now I'm the one left to pick up the pieces. I stepped back, leaving the door open, but not inviting him in. He looked like he wanted to speak, to say something to make it all better, but I could see it in his eyes. He knew there was nothing left to say. Nothing he could say to make up for the fact that he'd broken me while I was vulnerable. I handed him the letter that had been tucked under my arm, the bill, and the note that had sent him running in the first place. I already paid the price for everything, but you should know there's no easy way out of this. You can't just walk away like it was nothing, I said, my eyes cold, resolute. And if you think you can, then I'll be the one to make sure you understand what it truly cost you. He glanced at the bill, his face paling, then back at me. But this time, there was no anger in his eyes, just a quiet, painful understanding. He nodded slowly, his lips barely moving as he muttered, I get it. I'm sorry. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The goodbye had already been said a long time ago. There was nothing left for me to explain. No more words to make it better. As he walked away, I closed the door behind him, feeling the weight lift ever so slightly. It wasn't a victory, not in the way I had imagined. It wasn't a celebration of anything. It was simply a goodbye, the final act in the story we'd both written and I had no intentions of rewriting it. I stood there in the silence of the empty apartment, the world still spinning, still moving forward. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again.